All right, everybody, I am back with a brand new update. And this morning, I am talking about how Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon single-handedly caused the departure of Scott Stuber over there at Netflix. And we're going to take a look at this story here. Now, what I just told you and the headline to this video shows you the way the anti-Snyder crowd is treating the news of Scott Stuber's exit from Netflix all over the internet. You can see it on YouTube. You can see it on Netflix, when in fact his departure had absolutely nothing to do with Rebel Moon. People are going to tell you Rebel Moon's failure caused his ouster. And in fact, it did not. In fact, Rebel Moon is considered a hit by Netflix standards. I'm not going to go through the whole history lesson on and show you guys the charts on how they deem a success or failure as a film goes, but trust me, it made it over that finish line and then some. So it is a hit. Rebel Moon is a hit for Netflix. But we're going to talk about what this means for the future of Netflix and their movie division. So there are rumors out there, and I haven't been able to confirm this yet, that they're going to be scaling back on their movies, and that they're going to start focusing strictly on TV shows. Go back to the, doing like the Stranger Things Wednesday, those types of programs, and that they're going to start shying away from the movies. And people were so ignorant all over Twitter saying, oh, this is happening the day before the financials come out because he has destroyed their stock, yada, yada, yada. And if you look at Netflix stock, there's nothing happening with their stock. Their stock is not going down. Netflix is not having trouble. They do spend quite a bit of money on movies, though. And I think they want to stop spending that money on movies and start focusing on other things. And at the end of this video, we're going to talk about what that means for the future of Rebel Moon, for Zack Snyder, for restoring the Snyderverse or selling it to Netflix. We're going to talk about all of that. But first, we're going to take a look at the article that The Hollywood Reporter had on his exit. Scott Stuber departing Netflix as film head. The executive, who has been in his post since 2017, is forming his own company. This has been known for a while, guys. It has nothing to do with the financials. Scott Stuber, who pushed Netflix to expand into blockbuster movie territory, is stepping down from the streaming service's top film job to form his own media company. Stuber will remain with the streamer until March, at which point Netflix CCO Bella Baharia will temporarily assume his role while she searches for a replacement, Bloomberg first reported the news. Under Stuber's direction, Netflix's feature business aggressively entered the blockbuster space, courting filmmakers such as Zack Snyder, the Russo brothers, Michael Bay, and Rawson Marshall Thuber. The era began with the Will Smith star Bright, the 2017 film that had a reported budget of $90 million, a hefty number that turned heads at the time, that would soon look quaint compared to what was to come. Red Notice, starring Dwayne Johnson, Ryan Reynolds, and Gal Gadot, cost somewhere in the $250 million range to $300 million, while the Russo's Gray Man cost in the $200 million range. Netflix also shelled out $469 million for two Knives Out sequels from Rian Johnson, while it gave Snyder $165 million budget and likely more for his two-part Rebel Moon films. While the budgets were hefty and Netflix's self-reported numbers deemed them hits, many of the films were dinged by critics. Now, here's the thing. This is what people are going to point to show that they were failures and that this is why he's leaving. It doesn't matter what critics say. It has to do by how many views and streams it actually gets. And regardless of whether the critics liked it or not, the streams alone bring in money for Netflix. So all of those things were hits by Netflix, but maybe not liked by critics. Other films made under his tenure were critical successes that transformed into awards contenders, including Jane Campion's The Power of the Dog, Martin Scorsese's The Irishman, and Noah Baumbach's Marriage Story. In 2020, 2021, and 2022, Netflix was the most nominated studio at the Oscars. In a statement, Stuber thanked Netflix chairman Reed Hastings, co-CEOs Ted Sarandos and Greg Peters, and Baharia. 7 years ago, Reed and Ted offered me the amazing opportunity to join Netflix and create a new home for original movies, said Stuber. I am proud of what we accomplished and am so grateful to all the filmmakers and talent who trusted us to help tell their stories. Thank you to Ted, Reed, Greg, Bella, and the entire team. I look forward to continuing to work with them in the future. At the top of 2021, Netflix touted one new movie every week with a slate of some 70 features. That announcement came as the company was looking to bulk up its own originals library as other studios launched their respective streamers. In the following years, the streamer has pulled back on original film, though its output is still prolific. This next part is pretty astounding. Sarandon said in a statement that Stuber helped lead the new paradigm on how movies are made, distributed, and watched. He attracted unbelievable creative talent to Netflix, making us a premier film studio, he continued. Under his leadership, we've become the most nominated studio for 3 years in a row at the Academy Awards. 8 Best Picture nominations, 2 Best International Feature Oscars, 2 Best Documentary Feature Oscars, and our first Best Animated Feature Oscar. Scott, thank you for your leadership and friendship, and I can't wait to see what's next. Added Baharia, what Scott has accomplished in 7 years is nothing short of amazing. He created a world-class film studio, not only by working with established filmmakers, but also finding and supporting first-time creators. He's such a trusted partner and friend to me and many others, and I hope to find new ways to continue to work together. Here's where the truth starts to come in. Stuber's departure has long been rumored. The executive is known to have chafed against the company's restraints on theatrical releases, as well as the sometimes prodigious output, and it comes after a larger, longer series of exits in the streamer's film division. And they talk about how this documentary, not documentary, but independent film and documentary person, Lisa Nishimura, I can't even say her name, that's why I'm not talking about this, but she exited a while back as well. So they're kind of disbanding their movie department here. It said Stuber took the job heading global features for Netflix in 2017. At the time, the longtime Universal executive left his Bluegrass Films label, which he started with partner Dylan Clark. While at Universal, he worked on projects including Best Picture winner A Beautiful Mind, Meet the Parents, the Bourne franchise, and the Fast and Furious franchise. So he has a big resume behind him. What you're going to hear about is people are going to say that he single-handedly ruined Netflix by bringing Zack Snyder on to do his Rebel Moon films. So here's the reality of the situation. So let's talk about what this means for Rebel Moon going forward and what it means for sell the Snyderverse to Netflix. Right now, we don't know what it's going to mean. It looks more than likely that both projects are going to be ending, that they won't be taking on anything new, and that Rebel Moon will probably end with Part 2. That is, if they get the same streaming numbers that they got with the first movie. The first movie did make it well over the finish line for what they consider to be a big hit and worth the money that they invested on making the film. But at the same time, it wasn't like this massive, massive, massive hit. It wasn't, everyone, again, this goes to that false number that everybody talks about with the DC numbers, that everything has to break $1 billion. Well, then on that note, The Batman was a failure, and it simply wasn't. The movie brought in plenty of revenue for Netflix. What's really going to be telling is what happens with the release of Part 2 and also the release of the extended versions in the summer. They should have never started with the watered-down versions. They should have just released the extended versions and maybe release both at the same time so that the younger group can watch this version and then the adult group can watch this version and have them both available. The streaming numbers definitely would have been better. But at the same time, by staggering it like this, when Part 2 comes out in April, they're going to get a whole bunch of new views on Part 1 in preparation for Part 2. So we're going to see several bumps, and then you're going to get a bigger bump also when they get released in the summer because people are going to want to compare it. So they're going to want to watch it again so that it's fresh in their minds so they can do comparisons when those films get released. So until that happens, nothing has been decided with Zack Snyder. If they're wildly successful, you can bet a Part 3 is going to happen because they're not getting rid of their movie division. They're just scaling it back. And the reason they bulked it up during that time period was because of COVID anyway, and that's why they wanted to do a release a week, was to get people to go to their streaming platform rather than the others when everything happened with COVID. COVID is now done. People are starting to go back into theaters, and I think it's a missed opportunity not releasing some of these Netflix movies in theaters. They do sometimes, but Rebel Moon should have been released in theaters so that they could make a profit off of it, which they simply didn't. So what does this mean for the Snyderverse going forward? Well, nothing has changed. I could tell you that if Rebel Moon ends up being a huge hit when those, when part 2 and then the extended versions come out, there's a very real possibility that they could want it. I mean, they may want to keep Zack Snyder over there and create a bigger home for him, and they might want to still buy the rights because Scott Stuber is not the only guy down there making these decisions. And when he talked about there being real interest in the Snyderverse down there, he wasn't kidding. There were real discussions down there, and it's still a real possibility. Is it likely to happen? Probably not. I don't think it's likely to happen, but it certainly could happen. Until that door is completely shut, there's no way to say one way or another what is going to happen. But you're going to see a lot of people online making this out to be something it simply is not. And it's just people grasping at straws and having these meltdowns because something that they don't like, other people like. And it's crazy how you can't have a different opinion online. I saw some of the most disgusting comments I've ever seen personally towards me on Twitter last night, and I am going to start reporting those things. I mean, things that talked about some pretty horrible things, and it was just disgusting. People, man alive, doing this brings out all kinds of people, and it's just crazy how people can't have a differing opinion from you. But here is the truth of this situation. There's no opinion on this. Scott Stuber's exit was already planned. He was already going to be setting up a new studio. This isn't news. It was already going to happen, and it had nothing to do with Rebel Moon's performance or anything like that. It was just he's ready to move on. Things have changed over the last 7 years, and he's ready to move on to the next thing, and I wish him all the luck. I just hope that Netflix continues to back Zack Snyder and that he can eventually get his stuff from DC moved over there so that we can finish the story. All right, guys, so there's my update on this whole situation with Netflix. We will see you guys on the next video.